One moment. It does. I'm just going to start this. Shoot. Check. Okay, you may hear me.
You start video. Smeltzer, how you doing?
Can you hear me?
Hello? Hello? I'm just not hearing anything on my side. I don't know if you guys are hearing me. Just give me a confirmation if you guys can hear me okay.
I can hear you, Jamie. Can you hear me?
Test, test.
Welcome to our webinar today. I'm Dr. Wendy Smeltzer, National Medical Director for Wello and for Enlive, our multidisciplinary clinic in Calgary. So we wanted to move on to some new topics this week, addressing some of the issues many people are facing now. With so many people now staying at home and trying to adjust to this new norm, looking after our health as well as the health of our families is really more important than ever before. And this is likely to be our way of life for this foreseeable future. Nutrition and fitness are key elements of our health, and we need now to learn some new ways to maintain these. So today we have two experts in these fields here to share some information and advice on how to adapt and manage during these unusual times. So our first speaker is Kellyanne Erdman, and Kellyanne is a registered dietitian who works with us in our Enlive clinic. She has over 25 years experience in proactive and therapeutic nutrition. And as well, she does a lot of sport nutrition, weight control, eating disorders, and all aspects of nutrition. She's an instructor in the Department of Kinesiology at the University of Calgary and consults for the Canadian Sport Institute in Calgary, working with many national sport teams. She has a vast amount of knowledge in nutrition and is here to share some of that knowledge with us and some tips for this time. So over to you, Kellyanne.
Thank you, Dr. Smeltzer. My pleasure to be speaking with everyone today. I wanted to share a few slides, and then at the end of our workshop, we'll be entertaining questions. So what does COVID-19 virus mean to you? When it comes to nutrition, of course, we're self-isolated in terms of our permanent settings right now. We might be alone, maybe with family and friends, our children around their home from school. Some of us have fear illness, job security. We're certainly learning a different way of conducting our business and developing different skills. Are you finding that you're actually more productive, fewer distractions from work, or are other distractions in the household affecting your productivity? How has it affected you in terms of stress levels? Of course, change in activities. Jamie will be referring to the fitness component, but change in routine is huge for all of us. How does that impact on your nutrition? Are you finding more time for yourself or your family? Maybe some of you are eating better because now you're eating from home, less meals purchased. So all of these areas are impacted by our nutrition and vice versa. I know personally, my experience first with COVID-19 started back March 4th. I was supposed to go work for oil and gas in Fort McMurray, and I got a call the day before my trip. I'm sorry, we're not going to take you to provide nutrition support up at our site for fear of COVID. And I thought, boy, that's kind of strange. That was March 4th. How things have changed since then. Well, let's proceed to look at specifically on my next slide, what can we control and what's out of our control. I'm going to be elaborating on some of these points in a few minutes. But our immune system, what can we do on that front to be strong, to be able to fight this virus? And that means specifically, how do I stay better hydrated, energized, and what's the best routine for me? Should I be snacking often? Should I just stick to 3 meals, skipping meals? Does that help me? And maybe we're finding there's more time for family, and this might be an opportunity for more family involvement with menu planning, preparation, and enjoyment of meals. Of course, many things are out of our control right now, but I want you to think about that. When things are out of our control, how is eating going to resolve that situation? What else can I do besides reaching for food? So specifically to that point, I'd like you to consider to make a list. What else can I do to cope? Of course, we can always eat, and when we're hungry, that's a great choice. But maybe it's time to pick up a hobby, some crafts, some games, going for a walk, some meditation, some yoga. More specifically, we'll look to the next slide where I can define more detail on these key points. When it comes to routine, again, what's the best for you? to sit and have your balanced meals? Or do you stay more energized by building in snacks? Everyone is unique when it comes to that. That being said, please make sure that you are eating often enough to support your energy and to minimize some of the stress. Now that can also mean maybe at times we might be eating too often and reaching for extra snacks because of, as we see the seafood diet. Someone in the room is eating the smell of foods. So keeping this point in mind in terms of routine, ideally probably need to aim for about a 12-hour overnight fast of when we're not eating, just to give our body a break. Hydration is another key piece when our routine is changed because of situations like COVID. Are you drinking often? Are you drinking too much caffeine? So how about keeping a water bottle beside us when we're working so that we can keep up with our hydration? Can you set a prompt on your computer so that you're reminding yourself, I need to drink my fluids? What about alcohol? Please be aware, while it's maybe great to have an occasional drink, alcohol is a depressant. And if you're not feeling great in this particular scenarios, then let's maybe keep alcohol to a minimum. Is COVID affecting your sleep patterns? In terms of fluids, too much caffeine, of course, we know can compromise sleep on top of it. So the half-life for caffeine is 4 to 6 hours. So that means it stays in your system for some time. If you are challenged with sleeping, I would say probably try to stop caffeine sources by around 2 p.m. So that would be coffee and tea, any cola-type beverages that have caffeine content. What about supplements? I have some at my fingertips right here. The most strongest evidence would be towards a vitamin C in regards to reducing the severity and the duration, especially of upper respiratory tract infections. Of course, probiotic is an important supplement to think of, between 5 to 10 million active cell count. I'm sorry, let's make that billion, 5 to 10 billion active cells. So 70% of our immune system cells are produced from the gut. So having a healthy gut is very important there. Vitamin D is also critical in terms of our immune system as well. And one more to bring to your attention, and that is zinc as a supplement. So zinc we use as a mineral, and it's known to boost our immune system. In my hand, I have a zinc lozenge. So zinc, though, is a trace mineral, and we don't want to be consuming huge quantities of zinc, not more than 30 milligrams a day, the maximum levels. And again, zinc, if you're not well, can definitely help to boost our immune system. Further to that, one more supplement, and that is glutamine. This is a non-essential amino acid, considered conditionally essential during times of stress. So during that time, we would like to take glutamine 5 grams, which is a teaspoon, once or twice a day, again, to help our strong immune system. I'm also hearing in terms of COVID, many people are concerned with, what about the safety of my food supply? And to be honest, there's no 100% consensus on what's the best. But what we do know about this virus, it's transmitted from people when we sneeze and when we cough. So that being said, if we're at the grocery store, we have no idea what's happened in front of us with the people who may have touched foods or hands aren't clean. So keep that in mind. Makes me think of, if I'm going to bring some produce home, like here's a pear or an apple, I'm going to wash this with soap and water, rinse it off. Of course, the virus only lasts on foods for about 48 hours, if it's even there. And again, that's inconclusive. But to be safe, I'm going to eat this pear after I've washed it. What about something like, say, an orange? Well, if we peel it, that's great. But if there's a virus on the outside of the orange, it's on my hands and I might consume that. So best to even wash something like this with hot soapy water and then wash our hands and then peel it. Probably safest to go with produce that's already packaged, say in my package here of greens, rather than buying the produce that's open and in bulk. So food safety, a lot of unknowns, and we're certainly learning a lot as we go. I'd like to conclude in my message here today to talk about some nutritional management strategies, especially on the mindful eating process. So in terms of mindful eating, on my previous slide, just go back one shot, thanks. My point of this, with our change in routine, what's happening on our eating behaviors, our eating habits. I'd ideally like to suggest when it's time for a meal or a snack, get up, prepare that food, portion it, sit down, and enjoy your food. But maybe it's best not to bring the food back to our workstation, back to where we're working. Let's have a designated eating spot, a place where we can focus on enjoying our food. When we're finished with that, getting back to our work. And that's simply because the challenge, if we're visually distracted by working and reading television, we're just simply not necessarily aware of enjoying our food or acknowledging what we've had to eat. So being mindful about our foods means to sit, portion, savor, and enjoy. Be careful too if you might follow what we call the seafood diet. And that means if we're leaving food out and about and we see it, that might prompt the urge to eat. But was that a true hunger need? Again, maybe keep some of these tempting foods out of sight, out of mind, even if it's something healthy like nuts. Before you know it, a handful here, a handful there, and that can add up, especially if we're not as active in this current situation. And what about the awareness side of things? Many studies have found tracking our intake, reporting not only what we eat, but really looking at when am I eating. We might catch ourselves, wow, I'm reaching for food every 1 or 2 hours as a mental break from my work or as a coping mechanism because of different things such as stress. So by recording, that helps for our personal accountability to recognize when am I eating, what am I having enough to drink, am I eating often enough? Maybe there's too many gaps in my day. And again, in terms of the mindful process, what else can I do besides reaching for food during these times? Of course, food is our sustenance and in many ways can help us be strong and fight this virus, but at the same time, is it having a positive or a negative effect on your lifestyle? So on my next slide, I'd like to just summarize with set the stage around how can we help you to manage your nutrition during these challenging times. This is the last day of March, and March is our National Nutrition Month, has been for many years. I'd like to send you to a website, nutritionmonth2020.ca, and that's through the Dietitians of Canada. On that site, the theme this year is cook, share, and enjoy. And that is the whole message around Nutrition Month this year. At that site, you'll find some very unique recipes that have been posted, maybe some ideas there to share with the whole family. I look forward to entertaining your questions after we hear Jamie present. Thank you, Dr. Smeltzer.
Oh, thanks so much, Kellyanne. Some excellent tips there. So we're going to move on to our next speaker, Jamie Wilkins. He is the Fitness Movement Medicine Manager at Enlive, our clinic in Calgary, where he runs not only our general and performance fitness programming, but also developed a movement medicine program to help people at all levels and with limitations in their fitness journeys. Jamie graduated from the University of Regina with a degree in kinesiology, and then he did further certification in exercise physiology. He spent a number of years working in a rehabilitation and exercise therapy setting, and he has a true passion for bringing exercise and movement to all. He's also been creative, and in the past couple of weeks has implemented virtual one-on-one personalized training sessions, as well as virtual exercise classes. So Jamie, looking forward to hearing your advice on maintaining fitness through these COVID times.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Smeltzer. As Dr. Smeltzer said, I'm Jamie Wilkins. I'm here to speak on home fitness strategies and how physical activity can help us cope with COVID. We're going to start by going over some of the benefits to exercise and physical activity at a high level, since these are fairly well known, but more specifically, why are these benefits so important to us right now? From there, we'll focus on 3 topics. We'll focus on cardiovascular health, muscular strength and endurance, and mobility strategy that we can implement at home. As we touch on each of these topics, I'll provide you with a minimum requirement for adults, as well as give you some strategies for implementing a plan for each of those. So getting started here, benefits of physical activity. Let's begin first with the physical benefits. Reducing the risk of serious health conditions, not only reducing the risk, but managing serious health conditions such as diabetes, heart disease, stroke, and others. In times like this where our health is very much on our minds, we want to be certain that we're being very proactive in reducing our risk to any other health concerns. Second, building and maintaining our strength and endurance mobility. This is all about having a healthy, strong, and durable body so that we can continue to do the things that we love for longer. We're talking about longevity here. We want to come out of this feeling like we're capable and confident and we're able to continue to do those things that we love to do. Probably the most relevant point on physical benefits is that exercise helps boost the immune system. It makes us stronger and more resilient to infection. Now, I feel like for every physical benefit that there's 2 or 3 mental benefits to exercise and physical activity. Number 1, reducing stress. During and after your exercise, your body releases chemicals in your brain to help boost mood while reducing stress. If you're feeling stress, anxiety, depression, physical activity at any level is a great first step into sorting that out and dealing with it. Sometimes that's a lot easier said than done because of fatigue and other symptoms that come along with that. But like I said, activity at any level is a great first step to dealing with stress, anxiety, and depression. Improving sleep, point number 2. We know that sleep is a crucial factor when considering our overall health. Better sleep leads to a better functioning body and mind, reduced risk of illness. Finally, on the benefits for mental, a sense of control and achievement. It's really easy for us to feel a lack of control, as Kellyanne alluded to, feeling a little bit helpless staying at home. Making a commitment to focus on your health, to take back a little bit of that control goes quite a long way. Sticking to a plan and routine gives you that sense of accomplishment each day as we go forward. So covering the benefits, that's a little bit of it in short. We're going to move on now to the first piece. We're going to go into cardiovascular health. Now, the recommendations for the next 3 slides are made through the Canadian Society of Exercise Physiology, Canadian Heart and Stroke Foundation, and the Mayo Clinic. When we're talking about cardiovascular health, we're talking about any aerobic activity that gets the heart and the lungs pumping. Adults are required a minimum of 150 minutes of moderate aerobic activity a week and 75 minutes of vigorous aerobic activity each week. So what is the difference between moderate and vigorous, and then how do we define these based off of heart rate zones? Let's first break down moderate aerobic activity. So moderate is defined as anything that gets your heart rate up to 50 to 70% of your max heart rate. In order for that to mean something to you, you need to know what your max heart rate is. So just bear with me here. If you were me, I have a bit of a chart. Hopefully you can read this. If you're looking for your max heart rate, you're going to take an easy formula of 220 minus your age. In this case, we're taking a 45-year-old adult. That gives us a predicted max heart rate of 175. 50 to 70% of that, 87 to 122 beats per minute. So that's your zone. Now, if you don't have a wearable device or you don't want to be taking your pulse every 5 minutes as you're working out, there's another way to kind of define whether or not you're in that zone. You'll know whether or not you're in this range if while you're exercising, you're still able to keep a conversation going, but you do feel yourself breathing. So moderate activity can include anything from a brisk walk, maybe an easy bike ride around the city, obviously not interacting with those around you, sticking to your lane. Yard work, mowing the lawn, shovel the driveway, and in some cases, resistance exercise training, which we'll get to on the next slide. The recommendation here again is 150 minutes of moderate exercise per week. So that's again between 87 and 122 for a 45-year-old. What that breaks down to is roughly 30 minutes per week, 30 minutes a day for 5 days a week. So if we're talking, you go out for a 30-minute walk 5 times a week, that's a very manageable thing to do. and making sure that it's a bit of a brisk walk so you get yourself breathing, but again, you can still carry that conversation. When we talk about vigorous activity, it's defined as anything that gets your heart rate between 70 and 85 of your heart rate max. Using that same formula, we're looking at between 122 to 147 beats per minute. So it's a little bit higher at this point. Again, if you don't have a wearable device or you don't know how to track that using your pulse, in this case, it'd be really hard for you to continue a steady conversation with somebody because you're breathing quite a bit. Okay, you're not going to feel it pounding out of your chest. You're not necessarily getting lightheaded, but you're working hard enough that you feel like you can't carry on a conversation. You need to focus on your breathing and your repetitions of that breath. Excuse me. Activities of this would include a bike ride with some intention. When I'm talking about intention, we're not doing an easy cruise through the neighborhood. We're actually putting the gears up and we're pedaling. We're trying to get our heart rate up. Running, dancing, playing soccer in the backyard with your kids, or circuit style training, which again, we'll get to on the next slide. Anything to get your heart rate above that threshold, and you will feel yourself start to sweat around this point. 75 minutes per week. We want to break that down. What does that actually look like throughout my week? If we're doing short blocks of 15 minutes of vigorous activity, we're looking at about 5 days a week we have to do that. If you want to extend that a little bit longer, 25 minutes, 3 days a week. That's really what we're looking at. And like I said, we're going to get into the physical strength side and how that ties into our cardio as well. Summing this slide up, we need to be doing a daily 30-minute walk of some sort, getting moderate activity, roughly 30 minutes a day. It says minimum of 5, but let's not go for the minimum. Let's really shoot for it. Every day, 30 minutes of moderate, roughly 3 to 5 sessions of between 15 to 25 minutes of vigorous aerobic activity per week is sufficient, and that's kind of your baseline at that point. We're going to move on to the next slide now. We're going to talk about physical strength and endurance. All right. So let's first define what resistance exercise is in this case. Resistance exercise is any load that you can put on your body, be it gravity, some kind of external stimulus like a weight, paint cans, soup cans, tossing your 3-year-old kid in the air. That all counts as resistance exercise. Just make sure you catch them. Recommendations for this, guys: a minimum of 2 days per week of resistance exercise. This is helping to promote performance in everyday activities, promote bone density, stronger tendons and ligaments, which actually protects you against injury now and down the road. At the core of it, like I mentioned earlier, this is going to keep you doing the things you love for longer. Now the question is, how do we get this done while we're at home? So if a minimum 2 times a week, we need to be training all major muscle groups. What I mean by this is if you're doing 2 workouts, let's make both of those workouts head to toe, full body, toes to earlobes, you're doing everything. Starting exercise slowly with only body weight is my recommendation. It's the best way to get started. It allows you to safely test a few of your movements and experiment with the things that you like to do. Third point is to focus on the fundamental movements, things like pushing, pulling, different core movements, squats, some balance work. All of this to say that you need a well-rounded program. And there's a lot of stuff that you guys can find online. I'm sure there's a lot of questions on what platform should I be using, what app should I download. One that I found that's free, that's super easy to use, I'll just show it to you right now on my phone. It's called Fitbod. Okay, it's free to download. It's really great. It makes workouts for you. You pick your equipment. You can kind of pick your limitations. You pick what body parts you want to work on. So like I said, if you're doing full movements, full body movements, you can kind of pick your workouts based off of that. And like I said, start with body weight and then start progressing to load those movements afterwards. Our trainers are also working with clients right now through virtual training, as Dr. Smeltzer alluded to. We're providing one-on-one coaching and home workout programs for anyone who needs a little bit more assistance, a little bit more personalized guidance, and a program that's designed for them to support them through their home workout routines. Final point here is variety is key. Variety is key to keep you engaged. There's a million ways to get from A to B. Find a routine that makes you feel good, that still gives you a challenge. You're more likely to stick to something if it's fun, if it's challenging, if it makes you feel good, than if you feel like you're a puddle on the floor and you didn't really enjoy that. Try to include your family. video somebody in and challenge them to do it with you. The more you can kind of find some variety in the way that you're implementing the strategy, the more likely you're going to be able to stick to it. I'll add 2 points to this slide. Number one, be patient with your progress. Be patient with the results. These results come slowly, so it's the consistency in your week to week that matters most. It's okay to skip days and to skip certain workouts. You have to look at your week from Monday to Friday. Did I do what I said I would set out to do? Am I doing my 30-minute walks? Did I get my 2 resistance exercises this week? If you miss one, give yourself some recognition for that, but just make sure you pick it up on the next week. Maybe you do 3 the following week. It's also important to add that depending on the duration of your resistance training exercises and how intense you're working, by intensity, I mean, what is your heart rate at? So if you have a higher intensity and you're going for long workouts, those minutes can actually count towards your moderate and vigorous activity minutes from the previous slide. So keep that in mind. If I'm doing maybe 4 walks per day, I'm doing 2 workouts at a high heart rate, I'm hitting my cardio minutes just from those 2 workouts right there. So we're going to move on to my final slide, onto mobility. Now, this is arguably one of the more important things I want us all taking away from this today. Firstly, let's define what mobility is in relation to flexibility. So if flexibility is your muscle's ability to lengthen to a certain point and then return to its original state without any kind of control, you're just saying, okay, here's a stretchy band, it stretches, that's pretty good. Mobility is the muscle's ability to, with articular strength and control and coordination, move through a range of motion. So I'm not just stretching a muscle. Can I control that movement through that range? Flexibility gets us into trouble because if I can go down and reach and touch my toes, that's great. But if I can't pick some weight up under load, I'm actually looking at a potential injury down the road, because if I take my muscle to its max capacity and I load it, and I'm not saying on purpose, I'm saying maybe your kid jumps on your back when you're in a compromised position. Mobility is the ability to be in that position and control myself out of it safely. Flexibility is not going to give that to us. That's simply the length of your muscle. So mobility training is a way to restore your body's natural functions, reduce and manage pain, muscle tension through the body. Our bodies adapt to stimulus we put on them. For example, us modern humans live a good portion of our lives in a seated flex position. Everything we do is in front of us. We're on our phones, we eat, we drive. We're always flexed in this position. We sit a lot. I don't believe humans were designed to do that. We're designed to run, jump, swing from the vines, all of that. So what happens is when we're sitting in a position like this, our bodies adapt to the stimulus and we begin to compensate our movements, which actually causes more problems down the road. I want to, if Sean, you could pull the screen onto me just so people could see me a little bit more clearly. I want to show you guys exactly what I'm talking about here. So hopefully you guys can see me okay. I'm just going to back this up. Now, as I mentioned, we're seated a lot of the time. I'm in this position. I might be sleeping in this position. I wake up, I eat my breakfast. I might do a little bit of work. I make my lunch, I eat my lunch, I might drive somewhere, I come back home, I sit on the couch, we're always seated. So what happens when I'm standing up or sitting in this position is I'm shortening my hamstring, I'm shortening my hip flexor. I'm typically rolled over, means I'm shortening my pecs, means my chin's a little bit forward. This is not a normal posture for human beings. So when we stand up now, we've been sitting for a long time, imagine you just drove 8 hours, you're gonna get up, what happens? We get up, we go, oh, everything's tight. So what's actually happening is these muscles that I was short with when I'm sitting end up being short when I stand. So you can see this is still short and I'm very short through my hip flexor. Now I'm not going to walk around like this all day because this is ridiculous. What's going to happen is as I stand up, I'm going to compensate by lifting my chest. So now I have a lot of pressure in through my low back. This is still tight, but I'm compensating for the motion by standing up straight. I'm getting a lot of pressure on my low back. What we need to be doing is being able to tuck and straighten our legs and pull our rib cage back so we're actually stacked on top of our hips. So that was just a brief explanation about what happens with our bodies when we don't put a stimulus on it or we're continuously doing the same movement patterns. If I don't explore different ranges of my body, I actually lose those ranges. It's kind of like You know, if I never feel a reason to reach over my head, and one day I try to reach over my head, I'm not going to be able to reach all the way up. We're going to keep the screen on me right now because I want to give us some tools that we can use to address this now, and what can we really be doing to get ourselves moving. Number one is we need to be moving daily. We have to be moving this daily. So I'm going to show you one drill. If you're sitting right now, try to get out of your chair and join me if you can, if you're able. I'm just going to show you one quick drill now to address that seat muscle, that hip flexor that's really putting a lot of stress on our low back. So I'm just going to back it up once more. I'm going to make sure you guys can see me here. All right. Now, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into a split stance lunge. What I'm really focusing on is my hip flexors here, that tight muscle that we get when we're sitting down. So what I want to see people doing, well, I can't see you, you guys can see me, but what I want you guys doing is in a kneeling position, throw a cushion under your knee. We're going to sit back a little bit on this back leg. We're going to work on our hip flexor of this trail leg. What I want to do first is I want to turn on my glute. I want to squeeze right here. I'm going to feel a bit of pressure coming in through my tight hip flexor. Once you feel that stretch, while we're holding right here, I'm going to start shifting forward. Now, I want to make sure I'm not compensating for this movement by raising my chest, because now we're just in a different compromised position. Looks super weird. Again, straight line, squeeze your butt cheek here, feel that tension, and move through that tension very lightly. You shouldn't feel a whole lot of pain. It should be, mild discomfort, but we're just moving in through here. As we're stretching this, I talked about active versus passive. So we don't want to be passive and just let this stretch. I actually want to activate that muscle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my trail knee. I'm going to hold on to my knee here, and I'm actually going to try to slide my knee forward. It's not going to move, but I'm actually going to push it down. So while I'm stretching, I'm using the muscle that I'm stretching. I'm going to hold that for about 10 seconds and relax. You're going to find you can go a little bit deeper now. Go into that barrier. Squeeze again, body check, leaning forward. I'm going to push, and I'm going to drive my knee forward again. I'm going to hold that tension and release. You can pick this up a little bit, make it a little bit tougher. If you throw your leg up, nice and easy here, that's actually now giving me a full quad hip flexor stretch. In the same position, same idea. I'm going to engage back here to push my hips forward, and I'm going to slightly drive in. You feel a really good stretch up and down this. This is a perfect exercise to address those tight hips when we're sitting down quite often throughout the day. If we're feeling low back pain, it's usually because our hips are tilted over into that piece there. Thanks for sticking with me through that. All right. We want to make sure, number one, we're reducing our sit time. Get up, get moving. Standing desks are great. Finding time to go for walks during the day, doing your mobility routine every day. If we could go back to my last slide. Perfect. So I mentioned reducing sit time, get yourself moving, active versus passive stretching. Biggest key, guys, when we're doing mobility drills is not to just relax in it. You want to actually be working. This is this is an exercise for you. It's not let's stretch time. It's let's get moving. It's something more along the lines of yoga where you actually have to work and engage yourself with it. The move it or lose it principle. If you don't explore your ranges, you do lose them. So if I'm never reaching overhead, if I'm never pulling myself into different positions as human beings are designed to do, I end up with this compensation and this compensation of my movement that gives me problems down the road. So what I've actually done is I've put together about a 10 mobility drill series into a program. And anyone who's subscribed today, who's joining us on video, I'll make sure that you guys get this program. My recommendation for this, guys, is to make sure you're doing this in the mornings. You get out of bed, maybe have a coffee first, not too much, Kellyanne. Don't overdo caffeine. I've been doing that. Do your mobility drills first thing in the morning. Get yourself moving, loosens you up a little bit. If you feel like you're feeling a little bit of tension at your desk while you're working, take 10 minutes, 15 minutes, take it to the side, start stretching, work through a couple ranges of motion. I will make sure you guys get this PDF form. It's a 10 exercise series. It takes about 10 to 15 minutes. I want to wrap just by kind of a quick overview of what your week should look like. going forward. So we're talking, let's do 30-minute walk per day. Get outside, 30-minute brisk walk. Again, a level where you can kind of keep your conversation going, but you feel like you're working quite a bit. We're going to do 2 resistance exercises per week. We're going to count those. If you guys are working hard enough, we can count those towards our vigorous minutes, right? It's 75 per week. If we do 2 of those, 2 resistance training workouts per week, we're actually going to count that over. And then finally, with mobility, every day, anytime we feel like we need it, anytime we feel like we're feeling a little bit of tension or pain, in the mornings especially, we're going to do our mobility routine. And we're going to come out of this thing feeling good, feeling capable and confident, durable. We're going to get back to doing the things that we love to do. Again, I'm happy, as well as Kellyanne, to answer any of your guys' questions to the best of my ability. I'm going to go ahead and pass it right back over to Dr. Wendy Smeltzer. Thank you.
Some excellent info there. So we have a number of questions that have come in, and feel free to continue to type in and chat in your questions, and we'll try and get as many as we can answered today in our time. So I'm going to start with you, Kellyanne. So one question that has come in, and there's been multiple versions of this, but I'm going to read this one, and it encompasses a number of others. But as we stay home and we're really trying to minimize our trips to the grocery store now, what kind of foods should we get at the grocery store that has a longer shelf life, yet is nutritious?
Exactly. I mean, it's key that we continue to eat well to manage this challenging time. So, of course, non-perishable foods, if you're buying things that are canned, we would look for the sodium and the sugar content. So I would advise maybe a low sodium variation of different vegetables, especially tomatoes, tomato paste. However, that being said, I mean, we can also buy foods, cook them up and freeze them, and now they have a good shelf life as well. So I would still reach out and buy some fresh produce like tomatoes and such. Frozen veggies, though, are an option for us, and they're going to be packaged and food safe, have a great shelf life. So if you prefer to not go to the store as frequently, that can work as well. You can certainly get home delivery of produce and all your groceries for that matter. And on the food safety side of things, we just don't know what's been happening behind the scene on the handling of those foods. So even the canned items, I would wash them down. We just a food safety measure before we open them up, give them a wash. But Wendy, further to your question, some of the particular produce that tends to last the longest, hardiest, would be many of your root vegetables. So that would be your carrots, your sweet potatoes, onions. Most of these we would keep in the fridge in plastic so that they're less likely to oxidize and get soft. Even celery in double plastic will have a very long shelf life. And then of course fruits. Well, frozen fruits are great to have. For fresh fruits, those that last the longest would be your citrus, apples of course, and berries. I would definitely buy them pre-packaged and give them a good wash, but again, frozen works very well.
Great. And what kind of things would you store in your cupboard? A few questions coming in about if this gets to the point where we're limited in our ability to get out, what kind of things should we be storing in our cupboards that could still be nutritious and provide some healthy nutrients?
You know, I'll share with everyone a nice recipe with curried lentils. Your legumes are amazing in terms of their nutritional value, high in fiber, great source of carbohydrate, some protein content, also high in iron and folic acid. So your legumes would be lentils, chickpeas, kidney beans, black beans. Again, I would bring the cans home, give them a wash, tuck them away, and when I'm ready to use them, I'm going to make a curried lentil item. Open the can and rinse your legumes, lentils, black beans, in a colander. So rinse them off. You're getting rid of a lot of the salty brine, and then they're good additions for many, many meals. And you can even simply put a lot of those legumes onto salads. How about some canned fish would be a good one. I know people are often afraid, what about tuna? I hear it's unsafe. Well, the recommendation is apparently not albacore. So look to what's the source of your tuna. Is it yellowfin? Is it bluefin? Is it skipjack? They'll report the source of the tuna on the can. And again, wash that can, open it up. We would like to get tuna canned in water. Other foods that have a really good shelf life, eggs. And eggs can be an amazing meal. We could throw some black beans, some veggies in with that, roll them up in a tortilla, maybe with some salsa, and that's an amazing meal. So eggs will last a long time, buy in bulk, or again, have them shipped to your home with using some of the delivery services.
Great. Question for you, Jamie. I do not have any weights or equipment at home. What would you recommend as sort of an easy workout routine that I could do in a small apartment without equipment?
Great question. As I mentioned during the presentation, I think body weight is the way to go. You need to be able to explore your body's ability just under gravity alone. If you are looking to add external stimulus like weights or something like that, you can get as creative as you want. I mentioned, like, I do have clients right now grabbing their 2-year-old and doing squats with their 2-year-old, or grabbing soup cans and waving those things around. I myself don't have very much equipment at home. So I make use of different things like towels, pots and pans, whatever I can that holds some weight. Again, we're talking resistance. You don't need a home gym. You need space and time and the motivation to get started.
Right. Another question, Jamie. I have not been able to work out for a while because of lung pain and low energy. What do you recommend to start if I'm starting from that type of position?
If we're talking about any limitations that you have physically, whether it's something physiological or physical, I would recommend starting with the daily mobility routines. Those are very light. You're not burning very many calories. It's mostly based off of your movement and your body's capacity to work through a range of motion. Anytime you experience pain, I do recommend you consult with the proper authority, whether it be a doctor or physiotherapist. In your case, I would definitely recommend doing the daily mobility routines, trying to limit how much exertion you're going as far as intensity. Again, when I refer to intensity, I mean how many beats per minute your heart rate's going for a minute.
Great. Kellyanne, a couple of questions around supplements. And two have come up a couple of times. One is, what are your recommendations around B vitamins to decrease stress? Or elderberry, can that help with immune system?
Right. So in terms of B vitamins, they certainly are involved in our energy pathways and stress management. The B vitamins include everything from B1 to 12. And typically we would look at taking that as maybe a B50, 50 complex. Because it can be energizing, best to take that, not at bedtime, but maybe in the morning after eating your first meal or snack. And it's definitely a good choice in terms of energy management. Elderberry, by itself, I would look at a variety of bright colored vegetables and fruits, including elderberry, that are going to be antioxidant rich. They all offer different nutritional properties, but as antioxidants, most of the research is supported by consumption of foods versus antioxidant supplements. And of course, our antioxidants help to keep our body cells healthy and intact. And during times of stress, definitely a good choice. So again, elderberry, but other bright colored, all your assorted berries, fruits, just make it very colorful when we eat. And also, Wendy, a fun activity for those of you with young ones at home, how many have played the game Guess the Vegetable? Have an assorted tray of veggies, and then children have their eyes closed and put a vegetable in their mouth, see what they can guess at. It can be fun and get them going on exploring their tastes, and maybe that's
Also, Kellyanne, a couple of questions have come in about what advice can you give for handling cravings?
Yeah. And again, first things, I would question, what does that urge to eat represent? If it's a true hunger, let's make a nice healthy snack. And typically, If it's snack time, we like to go with low glycemic options. So maybe having a fruit like an apple with some cheese or with some nuts. So we like to pair either a fruit or a vegetable as our carbohydrate for some good energy, and have either a protein or a healthy fat with that. Again, nuts, cheese, avocado would work really well. That being said, if that craving is not necessarily a hunger need, but more of an appetite trigger, then we really want to try to get to the root of the issue and what does increase that urge to eat and what else can I do? Of course, we can always eat, but is that really what my body needs? And how else can I manage? Hey, maybe it's time to incorporate the activities Jamie's been sharing with us and to get up and get moving. So first things first, are we eating often? Are we hydrating? And what does that urge to eat represent? Of course, I've been doing virtual nutrition consults within Live. That's how we operate since, gosh, it's been at least now 5 years within Live. And it's nice to meet with clients individually and we can get to the root of some of these, looking at the full intake for someone and how are they eating in the day? When in the day do these cravings kick in? It represents a lot to me when I see someone might have cravings in the morning first thing versus later in the day. Represents two different things, for example.
Mhm. There's a similar question, not necessarily with cravings, but snacking. So I know I'm not hungry, but I almost involuntarily feel compelled to grab a snack, especially now that I'm at home and the kitchen is right nearby. So how do I handle that?
Well, maybe that's the case where we start to do some tracking to really be accountable as an eye opener. Oh, it was just an hour ago when I wrote down that I had a snack. Am I really hungry? Or what does this urge to eat represent? Maybe I need some water. Maybe I need to get moving. Of course, when we exercise, you're burning calories, but as Jamie indicates, your heart rate's elevated and that circulates your blood delivers oxygen, and hey, now we've got some energy. Often people find when they're physically more active, the urge to eat is less because you're energized in a different natural way. So that being said, okay, maybe it is a true hunger need. Again, let's portion that food, sit down, avoid visual distractions. So let's have an eating place and let's have a working place. And sit down and enjoy that food. If it's a real physical hunger need, absolutely. But hard to say.
Great. Jamie, question for you. Somebody has written in and said, I hate working out for the sake of working out. I love gardening, love other activities. What tips are on doing something while exercising for the sake of exercising?
Yeah, I saw that question. I really like that question because a lot of people feel a lack of motivation, especially when the knowledge base isn't there on what can I do. Gardening is fantastic. It gets you outside, it gets you moving. My recommendation would be to be creative, find activities that get your heart going. Again, resistance exercises and cardiovascular exercise, those are kind of terms, but if we think it as it applied, if you're gardening and you're outside being active, I'm all for that. Honestly, and if you can go do it with your family and get moving a little bit, that's even better. What I will say specifically about gardening or anything with really repetitive motions where you're a little bit in a compromised position, gardeners tend to get a lot of shoulder, neck issues and low back. I would recommend in this case, if you are gardening quite a bit or doing anything with a repetitive motion, try to switch up the sides that you're doing it on, switch your position often to keep yourself moving. Again, human beings aren't meant to be confined in little positions all the time. We have to move. So I hope that answers your question, but there's really anything like going out for walks, being creative and finding ways to insert exercise into your daily active lifestyle.
Great. Another one for you, Kellyanne. How do I maximize my diet and absorption?
I maximize diet and absorption. It's interesting question. We know that some nutrients are very competitive for absorption in the gut, that is, in particularly minerals. So they're the hardest to absorb. In particular, iron, zinc, calcium come to mind as minerals that they're fighting for absorption in the gut. So to maximize absorption, especially of your minerals, Ideally, if you're eating an iron-rich food, let's say it's a steak or some legumes or tofu, then let's not include something that's calcium-rich at the same time. Other consideration to maximize absorption of calcium, we need some vitamin D with that. What about vitamin D? What about vitamins? Well, there's some are water soluble and some are fat soluble. So to maximize absorption of things like your fat soluble vitamins A, D, E, and K, ideally we would take those with food as a carrier to help absorb those through the gut.
Excellent, thank you. And Jamie, there's a question here. Is it okay to work on cardio activities, or might that weaken the respiratory system and leave one more vulnerable to contracting the virus?
Great question. Any cardio activity, you're using the muscles around the lungs, you're using the body's physiology to actually strengthen itself. Yes, we're stressing the body systems, but that's to make sure that it comes back stronger. You're not depressing it to the point of absolute failure, and you're certainly not more than anything else risking yourself, your immunity to other infectious diseases. Now, there's obviously case by case, person to person. If there's a special condition that you're under, obviously, again, consult with your physician on that. But anytime you're stressing your physiology, you're actually trying to make it stronger.
Yeah, thank you. Also, a question for both of you. What are the top energy producing foods? Kellyanne, maybe we'll get you.
Good one, Jamie. I would agree. First thing, I get up and have my nice espresso in the mornings for sure. 2 coffees a day, though, if we can try to maximize that excess caffeine and the overstimulation. So that starts to get into the negative effects from caffeine. But foods, if you're looking at quick energy, those are plant-based foods. So that's carbohydrates. But most of us want more sustained energy, slow released. And so that's why I like to recommend with meals, including a healthy protein and a healthy fat. Fat we digest the slowest. So for the greatest fullness, or what we call satiety, we'd like to incorporate fats, healthy fats, oils, nuts, avocado with our meals. Even chia and ground flax has healthy fat in it. Protein with meals, a healthy fat, that's really optimal for really good sustained energy versus just the quick energy fix.
Great.
I'm going to go ahead and agree with Kellyanne here. She hit the nail on the head. Yeah, it was awesome. That was good. I got nothing to add to that.
Great, thanks. Another one, Kellyanne, a couple of people have asked, could you just clarify your comments about tuna, in particular the albacore tuna?
Okay, so of course, some of our seafood has contaminants, and people are worried about the mercury levels, particularly in tuna. And that's why, for example, during pregnancy, women are advised to minimize the amount of tuna that they consume because of the mercury level in the fish. It has been found that albacore tuna may have the highest levels of mercury. So typically speaking, from a health perspective, I would say no more than 2 cans of tuna. That's 120 grams each a week, just to be careful. And then, as I mentioned, certain types of tuna, I don't want everyone to get too worried about it, but if we can keep to 2 cans a week, there's other great proteins out there. And that being said, tuna is excellent for protein, but it's not a great source of omega-3. That's going to come from your deep sea cold water fish. And really, there's only 4 great choices there: salmon, mackerel, herring, and sardines. If you're not eating 2 of those, 2 servings of any of those, or 2 salmon twice a week, chances are you won't get enough of your omega-3.
Great. Another one for you, Kellyanne. Can you give us some just quick healthy dinners we can make? Ideas.
Yeah, for sure. So if we're worried about food safety, definitely cooking your vegetables will destroy any virus risk there. And the healthiest way to cook our veggies would be steaming. So some steamed vegetables, it could be a stir fry, roasting vegetables. I would always start my meal with, what vegetable am I going to have with this? And then what's my protein? So depending on your appetite, for most we're probably looking at your plate, at least half vegetable content, and that doesn't include the root vegetables. I'm going to count potato, sweet potato, even butternut, acorn, squash. I'm going to count those more like a starch, like eating pasta or rice. So let's make it up to about half of your plate as veggies, and then if we said a quarter as your starch, a quarter as your protein source. So some quick meals might be batch cook, a variety of different proteins, whether that's a fish, some chicken, some meats, and then maybe a chance to grill. Well, mind you, it is -10 out there, but grilling is often a great way to cook. And then what's that starch going to be? Now, as Jamie's mentioned, we're sitting more, maybe we're less active. The dinner meal, you might say, well, if I haven't been super active today, then maybe in my dinner meal, I'm going to make that more vegetable and protein. However, Jamie, some people might have extra time on their hands and be doing extra workouts. We can't just assume that everyone is sitting a lot too. And so carbohydrates in the starch form certainly may be warranted at that meal. Hope that helps.
Excellent. Question around, if I make homemade yogurt, do I still need to supplement with probiotics?
Question. And the challenge would be, we don't exactly know the live count of the healthy bacteria in your homemade yogurt, assuming, of course, you're starting with a culture and you're going to have the probiotic naturally in that yogurt. If you were not exactly sure, because how would we know specifically the billion count? We want at least 5 billion. Then maybe every second day or just 3 times a week, consider taking a probiotic supplement. And one thing just to mention while we're on the topic of yogurt, Greek yogurt is excellent for protein, but most of your Greek yogurts lack the healthy probiotic qualities that we get from a regular yogurt that's not Greek.
And another question regarding the supplements, Kellyanne, while you're talking about those, is can you remind me why the glutamine? Why glutamine as a supplement?
So glutamine is a non-essential amino acid, and that means we make glutamine when we eat protein-rich foods. But during times of stress, if you're sick, if you're fighting an infection or virus, we use glutamine to boost the immune cells. And the reasoning behind that, Dr. Smeltzer, is because glutamine is a fuel that's used by the immune cells. So when they're under stress, by taking extra glutamine, it makes your immune system stronger. You mentioned earlier that I work with athletes, and one of our protocols for traveling athletes is 5 grams of glutamine taken before they get onto their first flight, before they travel, just to boost their immune system because of the germs that they're exposed to.
Great, thank you. One last question, Jamie. People are saying, can you tell me again the name of those free exercise apps that I can access?
Yeah, I actually just put it back in the chat there. The one that I've used is called Fitbod. It's called Fitbod Gym and Home Workout Logs. Again, you can go on Google and search workouts, and you'll find things that are given to you. Now you got to pick something that works for you. I find that this Fitbod app, it works very well. But I do want to take a second and just talk about the structure of your workouts is what matters most. You can kind of insert different exercises that you like, but a really good way to go about this is if you're picking different movements to do, you can insert different things. So you should be doing some kind of a push, call it a push-up, push, pull, a row of some kind or some kind of a back exercise. You need to be doing squats, so that's a piston up vertical force pressing through your legs. A bend of some kind, so bending over from the waist to pick something up. A split stance, where your legs are split into a lunge, or laterally, where you're working one leg at a time or one arm at a time, very important. For core, I want us all getting away, because I'm talking about being in flexion all the time. This is where we're living. We want to get away from crunches. Crunches aren't going to get us that strong core we're looking for, unfortunately. What will is things like planking. So when you're bracing and you're in a plank, you want to be holding that for anywhere from 15 to 30 to 45 seconds. Holding that plank and bracing is what's going to build that core. And we're talking about core, we're talking about ribs to my hips and even my glutes, right? So we're not just talking about abs, it's your back, it's your obliques, it's my hip flexors, it's my glutes, it's all of that. Finally, something to twist. So some kind of a twisting motion to add into there as well. So we just talked about pushing, pulling, squat, bend, split, brace, and twist. If you guys work with that structure, that's your full body routine right there.
Right.
Pick and choose workouts from the Fitbod app or online and just start inserting different movements that you like to do and start challenging yourself with some variety.
Great. Well, thank you. Well, I really would like to thank both of you for all the incredible information shared today. Really helpful for people that are really struggling to maintain their health through these times. So that wraps up our webinar for today. I'd really like to thank everybody, thank Kellyanne and Jamie, and thank you all for joining us. I hope you did get some useful information and tips. And as a physician, I just want to conclude by saying how important it is for all of us to really observe these public health advisories, stay home when possible, practice social distancing if you do have to go out, and the importance of true self-isolation if any symptoms, if you return from travel, or if you have any contact with anybody with COVID. And I want to remind people there is no pause button on self-isolation. When you're self-isolating, you can't pause it and run to the grocery store. You are in self-isolation. So I hope everyone knows they can call Wello for information. You can contact your provincial public health authorities for excellent information. And we just want everybody to stay healthy and well through this time. So thank you very much.